Hey guys, and welcome back to another Lost Bits video right here on TetraBitGaming, the series where we explore the unused, altered, and unseen content in gaming. Now, I've covered a lot of FNAF games on this series, pretty much all of them I believe, but there's one that I haven't, and it's one that I actually never played up until the making of this video. Or at least I wanted to, I guess I just can't with my phone. And this is, of course, Five Nights at Freddy's Special Delivery. Now, this game is nearly scraping the bottom of the FNAF series barrel, as was voted by many of you. Now, before we go on, a quick shout out to this video sponsor, War Thunder. Featuring over 2,000 incredibly detailed different models of tanks, planes, ships, and helicopters made from the 1920s to the present day, you can choose your preferred vehicle playstyle and take part in huge combined arms PvP battles in either faster action-packed matches or more realistic tactical experiences in the most comprehensive vehicle combat game out there. The graphics and vehicle details look great, and tank battles are my favorite. Honestly, commanding a tank is a ton of fun. So help support the channel and check out War Thunder for free on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC using my link in the description. And for a limited time, new players and those that haven't played in over 6 months can claim multiple premium vehicles, premium account benefits, an exclusive 3D decoration, and much more. And with all of that said, slap the like button below to get a free hug from Augmented Reality Freddy. It's time to find some FNAF AR lost bits. Alright, so let's start things off by taking a look at several pre-release things that either were removed outright, were altered, or were actually left over kicking around unused in the game's files, even at release. Oh, and yeah, since the gameplay for this game is what it is, I'll just be using background footage from other games in the series. Come to think of it, I think this might be the first time I've ever covered a mobile exclusive game on this series. Anyways, first up, about a year or so after the game's initial launch, Joyrock, the game's user interface artist, revealed a bunch of early versions of the UI graphics that they had made up. These include various items, different graphics of the home, shop, and camera icons, some more of those, as well as some for the inbox and map screens where we can see this compass, this waypoint marker, as well as these maps. There's graphics for a taser, what looks like a phone camera flash, as well as a flashlight. There's several graphics of character silhouettes, as well as Cupcake here. There's a set of graphics including the lightning bolt used for the controlled shock mechanic, as well as 2 other lightning bolts and what looks to be a laser of some sort, and it appears like these were all ideas pitched for the controlled shock. Then we got several graphics featuring a silhouette of Freddy's head, some wrenches and screwdrivers, all alternate ideas for the workshop tab. Some more UI graphics for stuff like the camera, inbox, notifications, map, and setting screens. And there's also a set that shows off the 3D headshot renders that are seen on the map screen, and it looks like these were used as a reference for making these line art graphics. Lastly, there's also this set of vector graphics for several animatronics, and what's most interesting about these is that it also shows off one animatronic that, as of the making of this video, hasn't been implemented into the game. And this is none other than Lefty here, and we'll get into this some more later on in this video. And although Funtime Freddy was eventually added into the game in late 2021, at the time this artwork was first shown off, he wasn't available yet, so I guess this basically leaked the plans to include him. And furthermore, the plush trap render we saw back here is actually an early version of it that went on to be unused, as when plush trap was added, this render ended up being used instead. Then also, albeit pretty blurry, Joyrock had also featured a compilation of early gameplay conceptual screenshots on their site. And speaking of early screenshots, interesting enough, in the earliest images found on both the Google Play Store and Apple's App Store was this in-game screenshot of Shadow Bonnie. Notably here, we can see that this appears to be a screenshot of a pre-release build of the game, as it features an early graphic for the flashlight where it would have been more of a toggle switch with on and off text instead of the much simpler circle button. Then we can also see early graphics for the remnant icon, where it was seen as a simple swirl instead of the shining compass-looking one that was made up for the final game. Then next, we can get an extremely early look at the game's development, as several very early mock-up screenshots were found. As you can see, the graphics are really basic, and most of the time, just text is seen here as placeholders. We can see an early mock-up of the map screen where it looks like this was taken in London. There's some very early mock-ups of the AR gameplay, both encountering an animatronic, defeating it, or getting bamboozled. And I know it's just a placeholder, but I still find it pretty funny that they chose an OG Freddy render still from the original trailer for the first game. It's kinda charming, really. Next up, left over unused in earlier versions of Special Delivery, there are some unused graphics that appear to be from a stage of development where things were seemingly further along. And these graphics were actually meant for an early version of the first screen that the player would see when booting up the game for the first time. And as you can see, it looks quite a bit different from the final version. Most notably, this screen uses the same 50s style aesthetic that was seen in the game's launch trailer, so it appears that there were originally plans to lean more into that style than what was ultimately implemented. Now next up is something pretty wild that happened, as apparently in early 2022, some FNAF content creators were able to manipulate servers used in older versions of Special Delivery, and by doing so, they were actually able to unearth some pretty cool stuff found in some internal builds of the game that were never made available to the public. For starters, there were two early versions of 8-Bit Baby where they mostly appear the same as they do in the public releases, but this first version of it would have it surrounded by a thin blue outline shader, and then the second version actually just had a blue line outlining her behind the model instead. And both of these match up with how she appears in her plush suit icon thumbnail graphic in the game. Then next, a very early version of the plush trap stage was also found. And not only does it feature incredibly basic models and lacks textures, objects, and basically everything that makes the area what it is in the final version, we can also see early versions of the coil things that you need to shock here, a very early version of the power meter behind the player, and then finally, it looks like originally the plan here was for the player to actually push a physical button, or I guess as physical of a button as you'd want to call this, to shock Plush Trap instead of just pressing the shock button on screen like in any other encounter. I'm assuming this change was made so you could press the button from wherever instead of having to actually point your phone in the right place, which could have led to players missing the button in a crucial moment. And then lastly, similarly, an early version of the Dark Circus DLC map was also discovered, and although the layout appears the same as it does in the final version, just like the plush trap area, this too appears much more basic, and around the map we can see these little yellow things, and these are animatronic pedestals which spawn in an assigned animatronic. And although in the final version of the game, only Ringmaster Foxy and Ballora are ever seen in this mode, this early map also has spawn points for Circus Baby as well as Plush Trap, so it looks like those two were also once planned to appear here as well. And if the pre-release stuff couldn't get any crazier, apparently when this game first dropped, left over in the files was a very, very early version of the game's master data. And this revealed a bunch of features that were, I guess, once planned on being implemented, but as of the making of this video, just never were. And as of the making of this video in late 2023, there already haven't been any major updates to the game since late 2021. And with the game's developers Illumix seemingly moving on to other things, I think it's safe to assume that all of these things will remain unused. Anyways, first there are references to control keys, and apparently these would have been used to take control of animatronics to do just about anything with them in the game. Then next are several unused text entries that appear to have been meant for a planned Halloween event in 2019 that just never came to be, I guess, since the game wasn't released until late November of that year. All of these unused messages would count down the days up until the start of this event from up to 8 days away, and apparently these would have appeared on the map screen and would have been accompanied by a cheerful Halloween tune. And although a big reveal was teased here and players were strongly encouraged to not miss out, even to this day it's unknown what exactly this big reveal event would have been. And even on the big Halloween day of that year, players would have only received a message in their inbox stating, "We're coming," from an unknown sender. So unfortunately, it's all still a big mystery. Then next, it was also found that there were once plans for each animatronic suit in the game to have 4 associated trophy items that could be collected, with each of the 4 having different chances of being obtained. The first item in each of these sets would have been 100% guaranteed, the second would only have a 1 in 10 chance to drop, or 30% if malfunctioning, The third would have had a 1% chance or a 10% chance if malfunctioning, and then lastly, the fourth trophy item would only have a 1% chance of being obtained, and only if the animatronic was malfunctioning. Although obviously this would have been another RNG mechanic, some of the items here sound like they would have been pretty fun to try and collect. And if you remember back to that one really early mock-up screenshot for this game, we can also notice that the plans for these trophies, as well as the control keys I mentioned earlier, were seen there too. Also, malfunctioning is another mechanic that was cut from the game, and there are actually 4 scrapped inbox messages that were meant to have been sent to the player after they encountered their first malfunctioning animatronic. These would have all been from Freddy's Party Palace and would read as follows. Let me put my best hand unit voice on here. Customer service is investigating recent reports of malfunctions in our system. We regret any inconvenience or injuries to you, our loyal customer. As a friendly reminder, please note that all legal inquiries should be directed to the offices of Frederick and Sons only. As a courtesy notification, we are informing you that we have detected a minor malfunction in your recent order. We expect the issue to be resolved shortly, and thank you for your continued patience. We are continuing to experience difficulties reconnecting with your order. While we assure you that you are in no particular danger, we do recommend that you secure all doors and windows as a precaution. We wish to express our regret at the recent malfunction in your order. Our technical team is confident that there is no ongoing danger to you and have deposited 10 Faz coins into your account as a special thank you for your patience. Then next up, found amongst the prototype data were also various Faz-Facts. You may remember that we came across a few Faz-Facts in FNAF Security Breach, which were originally left over unused, but were later on added to the game in an update. Now, for the most part, these facts are much less humorous than those heard in Security Breach, and are more so factual, like mentioning that Fredbear's Family Diner was the original name of the first Freddy's franchise location, or that William Afton was behind creating the animatronics. But some are more interesting, like mentioning that Chica's Cupcake has its own unique parts and software, as well as that Rockstar Bonnie was actually made using parts from the original Bonnie. But then there's at least one more humorous fact here that goes over how hurricanes are not actually the leading cause of death in the city of Hurricane, Utah. It should also be noted, though, that since these weren't made by the series creator Scott Cawthon and weren't added to the game, they shouldn't be deemed as canon to the series. Then lastly, for the info that was uncovered from the prototype data are actually references to several characters that were slated to appear in the game, but again, as of the making of this video, were never added in. These unused characters include nightmare versions of the original 4, Nightmarian, Endo 2, Scrap Baby, as well as Lefty. And just like we went over earlier, all of these unused animatronics also were planned to have those trophy items that the player could have obtained. Now, although it's unclear why these were never added, like I teased earlier, what's extra weird is that even though Lefty was never officially added to FNAF AR, there were quite a few things left over for him in a pre-release version of the game, suggesting that he was pretty close to being ready for release. And this not only includes stuff like a description of Lefty's lures and some quotes that Lefty would have said on the map screen when encountered, like "Peekaboo, I see you," "Come give me a big hug, won't you," and "It's almost the end of your story," but there were also plush suit and CPU icons, some icons for Lefty's lures, a render of Lefty's map icon, and even a full 3D model and some textures too. There was even this promotional render graphic that was made up for him as well. And then, to add to all of that, there are also a few more ideas for Lefty that were thrown around, but like him, never made the cut. The first of these was a scrapped idea where encountering Lefty would have him circling around the player, and then the player would have to actually physically close their eyes after hearing a sound cue and feeling a device vibration. And then, after a few seconds, another set of cues would signal to the player to open their eyes. Yeah, apparently, the idea was that a device's front-facing camera would be used to detect if a person's eyes were open or closed for this mechanic, which seems pretty ambitious, to say the least. Then, after the decision was made to scrap that idea, a second one was put together for Lefty where he would actually chase the player around in different rooms. And although this was again scrapped for Lefty, this idea did eventually get reworked into what was implemented in the Dark Circus DLC. So yeah, it's incredibly strange that with all this content and these ideas, even after several years, Lefty was ultimately never added to the game. And then, with much less leftover, Nightmarion also actually had some more leftover content than the rest of the scrapped characters, as there was an unused eye shader for it found alongside the previously mentioned Lefty assets, as well as a leftover text description for its lures too. Again, a big thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out my link in the description to get on the battlefield and claim your epic bonuses. Anyways, we'll wrap it up there for part 1 here, but there's lots more unused content for this game to go, including unused graphics, audio, and more, which I'll cover soon in part 2. Till then though, check out some of my other Lost Bits videos, and be sure to subscribe to the channel to find your way back here in the future. Also, a big shout out to Forsaken Bonnie, as well as a bunch of the other fellas in the Technical FNAF Discord for being a massive help with making this video. And as always, thank you all so much for stopping by today, and I will see you in a bit.